Hey everyone, welcome to Big Blend Radio. Today we get to chat with author, educator, and playwright Kimberly Behre Kenna about her first installment of her new Brave Girls collection. We like that. We like to hear about brave girls. And
Yes.
the first book is called Artemis, Sparke, and the Sound Seekers Brigade. It is publishing on World Wetlands Day, which is February 2nd, 2023, and it'll be out through Fitzroy Books and Regal House. And I encourage you to go to Kimberly's website, which is, oh boy, Kimberly, you're going to have to pronounce it all for everybody because the spelling and the pronunciation, we're going to have an English-French lesson here.
Yes. So Kimberly, Kimberly BehreKenna.com.
Okay, so is the Kenna, where does that come from? What?
I'm not, the stories are so mixed. Some people say it used to be Kanawha, Augh. Some people say it used to be AY and they took the A. I mean, it's just, no matter who you ask in the family, you'll get a varying story. So I can't give you the truth on that. I don't know.
That's cool. Well, it's cool. I love it though. Hey, listen, my last name is Smith, so it's very rare when someone gets it wrong or gives me any kind of, excitement about my name. But really your book, Nancy's been reading it. I've started reading it. And I think this is so important about youth and connecting them with the natural world, and then not only connecting with them, but then becoming protectors. And obviously your educator background definitely is in that book too.
Oh, for sure.
So yeah, tell us a little bit about what got you started to write, these books.
So I was a fifth grade teacher and we taught the ecology of Long Island Sound. So we would bring the fifth graders to the salt marsh right close to us. And there are trails and we'd hike the trails and we'd use binoculars and take notes in our journals and draw pictures. And the kids were just totally enamored with the place, just as I was and always have been. So I really loved seeing the passion of kids when they would get into nature and just connect with it. Like my shyest kids would all of a sudden light up and talk. It was just very interesting, the impact nature had on them. So when I finally decided to leave the classroom and go back to school for writing and write full time, I continued my hikes as I do now. And in the salt marsh one day, I heard a little whisper in my ear, and it was a girl named Artemis, 12 years old. And I was leaping forward and making the connections with my students and with other kids I'd worked with in other ways. And myself being in the salt marsh right then and looking around and thinking, what would happen if this weren't here? Because the salt marsh for Artemis, and the shoreline in general for me growing up and even now, is a real sanctuary for her. And so that the story started that way. And I also drew on some other classroom activities that we had. For instance, when we would study ecology, we would research and learn about some ecologists that might not have been scientists, or environmentalists that might not have been scientists. For instance, Simon Rodea, who built the Watts Towers and used it all recycled stuff to build them, and he didn't even speak English. And these are still in Los Angeles. I believe they're still preserved there. So just thinking about, nature and preserving things. And Simon Rodea was trying to make his community, bring his community get together with these towers to give them something to be proud of. All of these kinds of people. I'm trying to think of some other ones. Ding Darling made cartoons. He was a Pulitzer Prize winning cartoonist that had very satirical cartoons about nature. Just all kinds of people, including, Rachel Carson and people you would expect. They would research those, we would, and ultimately they would each choose somebody, and they would have to write a monologue written in that person's perspective. They would become that person. They would do debates. They would make a team and decide, okay, how can we use these strategies from these ecologists to save some problem in our, or to fix some problem in our area today. So it's how does the past influence the present? They were really, stepping into the shoes of the past and using what they learned to try and figure out what might help save our sound, our sound. So I transferred all those all are in the story, basically, because Artemis conjures up the spirits of ghosts, and those ghosts leave her clues about what to do. And it just proceeded pretty organically from the way I taught.
It's interesting because it's also kind of a coming of age story where she starts to think for herself. That's something it's like, her mom's going through a divorce, has a boyfriend in a hotel on the Sound, and so she's having to balance all of that in the communication with her mom, but at the same time, how do I get my goal to my goal? Which, and I think fifth grade's interesting because even fourth grade, I know we have this program in the country where kids can go to parks for free, like national parks and things like that, because it's that age group. And then the fifth grade is just right, a step above. So they're able to take that excitement and start to do something.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting age, for people to get involved. But Nancy, you're reading it. You're an adult. I mean, I think this could be for adults too.
Well, absolutely. Actually, it is. It's one of those books I'll finish, even though it was meant for a different age group. That I wish I had it when Lisa was growing up, because I would have given it to her to read, and she would have loved it because she was such an outdoorsy kid. Growing up in parts of Africa, and she was always playing with something in the garden. I'm bringing something into the house that you're like, uh-oh, but so I think this is going to appeal to lots and lots of kids. And I'm glad that you chose to make it about a young girl instead of a boy. Not that would have been anything wrong with that, but just because girls don't usually like to pick up creepy crawly things. I like that she does.
She definitely does. Yeah. And also girls I just read a study last couple of weeks that in middle grade books, that girls are still only the protagonists in 24% of them, and the rest, and then 60 something for boys. And then there's sometimes dual protagonists, and the rest are, 60, 70, 80, like 15% dual. But don't quote me the numbers, but the minority of protagonists are female.
And even in adults, I mean, the women are always falling down over a tree trunk in high heel shoes if they're running from someone.
They're always running in high heels
and falling,
Come on.
And I'm like, come on, we don't all fall down. Then we can't kick butt back, So I think you're right on that. And for young girls to feel empowered, and we're in a climate where there's more support maybe for that, to support the girls who want to be tomboys. And I was a tomboy for sure. It's like you did, but and I battled with, actually, when I think about my whole childhood, my best friend, like Melissa, she was like me. And so there's some like that, but most of the girls were more into princesses and girly stuff. So
makeup.
All of that stuff that we didn't really care, like we did for a day. And then we did things to our dolls that nobody wanted to see.
I bought Lisa one of those heads where so she could put makeup on and do the hair. It took 10 minutes and she shaved
I gave it a mohawk and I made it
a mohawk.
She became a punk. But in my defense, we had just moved to England. It was the height of the punk era. And so I saw what was going on. I'm like, no, she's not going to look like that. We're making her into a punk. And that freaked out the family. And I'm like, no, well, come on. It's cool.
That was so funny.
Put like a safety pin in her ear and everything. It was cool. But that's the thing I wonder about for girls, to be able to have something where the inner naturalist, and also to inspire women to become naturalists. What do you think about that side of it for Artemis?
Definitely, I agree. It wasn't in my head when I was writing the book, but certainly I thought about it. More in my head was the fact that I am a girl and I relate to girls that way. So the character came to me as a girl. But I hope that Artemis, and I believe both Artemis and Warren, her best buddy in the book, both have traits that aren't traditionally male or female. They're multifaceted characters. You know, I just don't think that whole classification thing is going on so much these days. And so I hope that both characters would appeal to all kinds of kids.
They definitely both have their own individuality. I think you did a really good job on that, because you do pick up books where, okay, here's a 15-year-old boy and he's going to do this, and every time he does that, he says that, and you get those kind of books. You really do. So this is a way more thought in it. So, and I really like that, because as an adult, I'm going to finish it.
Oh, thanks.
Me too. Yeah, me too. Tell us a little bit about the sound. And, you know, when you think about everybody, and people may think that this is all in Connecticut, right? So that we should bring that up. And hey, you know what? We don't get to read that much from Connecticut either. I'm just going to bring that up.
Well, there
How
you
often is that? Yeah.
It's definitely based on places I've been and places I've grown up. I spent most of my life in Connecticut within, you know, close contact with the shore. So definitely it comes from that. But I mean, there have been plenty of business trips that I had to go on with my husband to places that had beaches. So, you know, those played in my mind as well. All inspiring. This
a sound is also really interesting, because you start getting in that crossover into freshwater, saltwater, and that to me, we really need to protect these areas, and a lot of times they get polluted. And so I love that part of, you know, looking at what are we doing in regards to building and tourism, and you know, that's what we do on our Love Your Parks tours. Look at, it's great to have a hotel, but how is that hotel running? It's great to go on a cruise ship, but are we dumping our stuff into the ocean? You know, I mean, it's a floating city, no matter how you look at it. And there's smaller cruise lines that do better things. So, you know, people have options. We can vote with our dollars. So, you know, really, we can make those decisions. And I think that's something too, to look at, you know, as kids going on family vacations, maybe they can look at it, reading this, going, okay, where are we staying? I wonder how are you being kind to those that I care about as a kid?
That's
and
right.
later an adult.
That's right. And as the book suggests in one scene, you know, if the tides keep coming in and the salt marsh gets destroyed, and what happens to landowners who own the land nearby? You know, it just floods in. The salt marsh is a protector, as well as being the source of nutrients for all kinds of creatures and plants. It's a protector for the land around it. So
and the waterfowl, you know, and you also think there's areas now, you got to think about, like in the Gulf of Mexico, where people have built up on the shoreline, a hurricane comes, and there's a big movement to make that shoreline area more into like a national recreation area. So that, well, because we have to do that kind of thing to get people on board. We can't just be a refuge. We have to be able to use it too, to kind of create this buffer so that it actually protects the homeowners and, you know, the businesses and, you know, infrastructure. So if we have this buffer, I mean, that's a natural thing that nature's given us. And if we let it be, when hurricanes come, we're not going to get it as bad in, you know, as if you're there. And we've done, I mean, I remember even in the San Diego coastline, Nancy, how many people would get building right on the bluffs of the coast. And it was eroding
down the bluff.
They're falling down, and the Sierra Club would go, hey, people, you need to think
like,
about selling your land and moving, and people would get upset about it. But the reality is, every year here it would come. oh, we're
Mhm.
sinking, we're eroding. Well,
My house
you
fell
know,
off
I'm
the
not trying to
cliff.
be mean, but I'm just saying, you know, we have to
But
have these balances for
and
nature.
it's
Yeah.
interesting because those homes were built with permits
Oh.
given
Many years
by
ago.
the engineers who said it was safe.
Years ago, though, yeah.
So, I would just say to anybody that wants to build their house on a cliff overlooking the ocean, you better get more than one engineer because
It's changing.
from what we witnessed, it's not safe.
Mm,
Yeah.
It
Well,
really isn't.
I mean, we live right near the water, and around here there are all kinds of laws.
mm.
You really have to jump through hoops for people to do things
Mm.
in their homes. So and
Oh, that's good.
often they're turned down when they apply.
Okay.
So you really have to be careful. And I mean, that's the responsibility you have if you live near the water.
Mm-hmm.
Really got to watch what you put on your grass and in your plants, and what
Mhm.
the soil, and it's not just throwing a paper cup on the beach. There's
Yeah.
a whole big lot of things you got to think
A
of.
ripple effect. Yeah, it's a ripple effect.
Mhm.
Every
It's
action
true.
creates a ripple effect. And that's the other thing too with climate change. You know, being a kid now has got to be scary in a lot of ways, right? And even for parents and thinking about, okay, how do I tell my kids it's safe to go to school? Like, it's a weird time frame for
It
kids.
is. It is.
And it's important to talk about but I think the role of writers and what you're doing is giving these kids some empowerment to do versus sit back and be fearful.
That's exactly, you hit the nail on the head. And that's exactly why I wrote this, and why I'm writing the way I write other books as well, is to empower, but also to give hope. And you're
Mhm.
right. I think it's a scary time.
Mhm.
And um, and it's not like kids aren't afraid. They are afraid. So those things do need to be discussed in books. I mean, I think there's a good balance that can be made. You have to have a little hope. You have to show some ways of becoming empowered to kids through the story. And it just, as you brought up, Lisa, it's a great way to open a discussion about what's
Mhm.
going on, because we've got to talk about it.
Mm.
Oh, we do, for sure.
Ooh, so what about book clubs? We're always thinking of book
Mm.
clubs and it's ladies sitting around drinking tea or sherry or wine.
For wine.
And you're right, I'll go for the wine, we do.
Mm.
But for kids, do you see book
It's
clubs
book club.
being, I mean, like a book club, maybe even parents and kids together with authors discussing these things and even using it as a community? Because
Cool.
you talk about the Brigade, which I love because it means
Mhm.
teamwork. And
Yes.
that means
Mm.
you're not trying to save the world on your own. You don't have to carry the world on your shoulders. You
Mhm.
can do this with your friends. Some aren't going to be part of it, but some will. So that's another whole skill set to learn at that age, is teamwork and delegation and working together and all of that. And you're going to win some, lose some, and it's easier to win
Mhm.
together. It's more fun, but if you lose, at least you have solace together.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So I
Exactly.
think I love that part. So the
Well,
book
and
club
teamwork.
I would love to see
Yeah,
family book clubs these days.
Yeah.
that would be awesome.
I think there are like the mother-daughter ones, like you mentioned, or,
Mhm.
parent-child or whatever. But I do love the idea of a community read, a
Mhm.
community group. And, one of the things with the whole feeling sort of hopeless and scared, yeah, your voice is just one voice. I'm saying it, to a child, your voice is just one small voice, but one way, and even to an adult that's feeling despair. When you join voices, the power of joined voices is just supreme. I mean, that will
Mhm.
help with the despair. And like you
Mm.
Mhm.
said, Lisa, if things don't work, failure does happen. You have people to buoy you up, if you're
Mhm.
part of a group,
Mhm.
which I love that idea.
And failure
Yeah.
leads to success because you have to look, okay,
Mhm.
what went wrong? What did I miss?
Yeah.
What can I do next time? And she starts off,
Mm.
I mean, your book starts off with that.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
the very beginning of her being
Mhm.
scared about speaking and
Yeah.
how to, you know, that, and as a kid, I mean, oh gosh, we just did an interview yesterday. I was talking about how I was the most fearful public speaker to even say who I am. You would never believe it, but it's really true. The sweaty
Mhm.
palms, all of it. And I think as kids, you have that. And when you get behind something that you really love, it helps you move past self-confidence issues and
That's
get
true.
beyond.
Yeah,
Dude,
if you're passionate about the subject, then it's a lot easier than, okay, do this book report and you didn't even read the book, you know?
Right.
I'll give a report,
Mhm.
you're all like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was the same way as a kid, and even as an adult, you know, it's
Mm.
it's hard for me sometimes, except if I'm teaching or talking about
Mm.
teaching kids, you know, that's easier because I'm passionate about it.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I think you're right. If it's in your heart, it does
Yeah.
help step up to the plate, really, and
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah. One thing I want people to know about too. Again, this comes out at World Wetlands Day. Very important day
Love
around
that.
the world. I mean,
Mm.
it's a global initiative, and I mean, Nancy and I can talk about wetlands till the cows come
Oh,
home, having
yeah.
lived in different places. Kenya, we
Mm.
talk about this on the show a lot. You know, in Nancy in Kenya in the late 70s when we were there, Nancy worked with Joy Adamson, Elsa the Lion, Born Free, all that good stuff
Mm.
in the bush. And Nancy, I mean, we have a storage unit in Tucson we were telling you about before. You know, we were, we have a little storage unit, and it's really Nancy's artwork. She's a wildlife artist, and slides and showing Kenya back in the
Over
day,
the
basically.
years.
And even when we were there, at that time, we were still losing huge parts of species because of the loss of the
Mm.
great white hunter and poaching
Mhm.
and things.
Well, in
However,
change in the environment,
the change of the environment.
pollution.
So wetlands would be massive for
Oh,
biodiversity. You could go to a
absolutely.
wetland, a watering hole, as we'd call them.
Mm.
You'd
Mm.
see crocodiles. You would see, all
Mhm.
kinds of antelope like impalas and zebras. You'd see
Mhm.
giraffe. You would see wildebeest, eland. You would see, and
Mm.
then all the birds, marabou storks. I mean,
Mm.
you could see 30
All
to
at one
50
time.
species at one
All
time.
at one time.
I mean,
You
30
know,
to 50
it's
species. You have to look because there's
amazing.
turtle. I call them turtles.
Yeah.
It's a cross between a tortoise and a turtle.
Right.
It's just a thing that'll never leave me. But
Mm.
and then there's the bugs and all these other things.
Mhm.
And you got to think about the plant biodiversity,
Plant
because if
life.
the plant life is not there, the animal life is not. And you need the animal poo to make the plants. And so all of this stuff happens. So if you look at it, we've got to do something with her slides to show true biodiversity,
Mhm.
even when it wasn't at its best. And if you compare it to now, we know friends who've just come back from Kenya and Africa, like, oh my gosh, we saw the wildebeest migration. I can guarantee, look at their photos and you compare them to what we
Mhm.
experience in Nancy's, it's night and day.
Now,
It's
I'll have
night
like
and day.
20 species in one slide,
Oh, wow.
different animals. Today, they'll have maybe one or two,
Or 5 if you're lucky.
if a couple birds. You
Yeah.
know, so the diversity has really changed,
Yeah.
Mhm.
you
Sad.
know,
And
which is
drought
sad.
has
It's
been a
sad.
really massive thing too. And drought,
Mm.
yes, sometimes there's natural drought and cycles, right? Like
Mm.
right now, as we talk and record, California is going through this huge flooding, but it's going to help the drought, and it's really devastating for people in their homes. I mean, and it is, and we have friends in it right
Crazy.
now.
Mm.
On the other hand, nature's taking her solace. But as we play with the climate change,
Mhm.
these places we're swinging. We're going drought, flood, So
Mhm.
I think again, like going back to your book, it's like the wetlands. I love that you're standing up for the wetlands, that your book is coming out on World Wetlands
So
Day,
important.
because they are key to actually all these other, like
Mm.
without the wetlands, without the sounds, then even the beaches don't work and the ocean doesn't
Right.
work, the rivers don't work. So that's that
Mhm.
in-betweener zone. But your book, I know, are part of the proceeds of your book going to an organization, Save the Sound?
Yes, they are. Yeah.
Awesome.
Safe and Sound, it has a place in my heart because of all they do for the shoreline around here and in New York. Well, not just the shoreline, the shoreline, water, air, and land is
Mhm.
what they dedicate themselves to: preservation, conservation, and restoration.
Mm.
And my fifth graders at one point made magazines and sold them, and gave the money to save the sound. So
Oh, nice.
it's just
We
been-
love that.
Yeah.
so it's been they're just amazing, and they're local, they're right, in New Haven. And I'm very, very connected with them mission wise.
Very
And I
cool.
want to give, and hopefully we'll get him back on a show with you at this,
Mhm.
to come
That would
back
be
on our
awesome.
nature. We do a third Friday nature connection show that, I mean,
would be
it's
perfect.
gone off the hook. It's gone crazy. Like we're doing so much on it. So everyone, savethesound.org is the website for the organization, because we want to give them a
Mm.
shout out. So yeah, so I heard that there's more coming in this collection, the Brave Girls collection this
Mm.
year. So
Cool.
we
I
can go
know.
from one to the next, like immediately.
Yeah, I didn't expect it to happen so fast, but I do have the second one coming August 3rd of this year. Jet Jameson and the Secret Storm, another brave girl, having to deal with some inner challenges, as well as some outer challenges having to do with book censorship. And yeah, I'm so excited to have both these girls come to fruition within 6
Cool.
months of each other.
Oh, this is excellent.
It's
This is
nice.
excellent.
I like it.
So can you give us a sneak peek, a little bit more of the next one, or do we have to wait?
Oh no. Well, the big sort of topic, we were talking about difficult topics. The topic that Jet Jameson will provide a lot of discussion about is trauma, childhood trauma. And there are several middle grade books lately, and even more coming out this year, that have to do with sexual harassment, abuse, domestic violence. It's all just becoming more common, thank goodness, because we need to talk about these things with kids.
Mhm.
And again, it's a very, you do it with a delicate balance. There's no graphic details at all. But there's hope, there's humor. The characters in the book sort of soften the edges around the more difficult topics. But that is a book that is very close to my heart. And I believe I would love to see that one in book clubs, Lisa.
Yeah.
To that. It's just something that people really need to start talking to kids about. And I think
Yeah.
better at. I think they are doing better with that in schools, or some schools that I've heard of. But hopefully these books that are coming out from various authors that are choosing to include these topics in their stories will help all of this.
I think
I
it'll
want
help
them
the
all in.
children for
Yeah, the
sure.
kids, because
The
sometimes
kids, you know,
you don't know what situation
you don't know
they're
where to
in,
go, what to do.
and they may get your book in a school library,
Mhm.
or, get it on
Yeah.
Amazon or whatever, and Kindle. I mean, kids have access to things that they didn't have, when I was growing up. And
Mm.
if they have that and they can read it and go, oh, okay, I'm not
Mhm.
alone.
Yes.
Yeah, number one.
You're not alone.
Yep.
And I mean, that's the thing. And I think that's a very big lesson to learn, especially if you're in a really bad place, a bad circumstance,
Mhm.
and to understand that there's a way out. There's always a way out of everything,
Mhm.
even climate change, right? There's a way out.
Well, yeah. And
Yeah.
kids to know that there are places they can reach out to, and
Mhm.
people and adults that are
Mhm.
Mhm.
ready to help you. Yeah. And again, if the book is shared with an adult, it's even richer,
Mhm.
because it's the book can provide a safe place for kids to experience maybe what they haven't experienced. Maybe they think their friend is acting really odd. And we shouldn't prejudge that, because you never know what another kid's story is. And I think the books that I've written, I hope that they bring that out. Let's not prejudge. Let's wait until we know the story, if that person chooses to tell their story. And it's a way for a child, either, as you said, to feel that they're not alone, or it's a way for a child to learn more and to develop empathy for these kids that are in a difficult situation.
Mhm.
And sometimes they don't know that they're in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
That's another part of it. It's like, you're it doesn't feel right, obviously, but you
Yeah.
don't, you know what I mean? You could be brainwashed. And I mean, that's a whole other, don't even start me. That's a whole other show.
Yeah,
a
it
whole other
goes either
topic.
way. You think everybody's like that? All families are going through the same thing, or you think you're the only one?
Exactly. And
Yeah,
that's
so you're the
such,
two opposites.
such a good point, though. It's especially I
Mhm.
think people, it's in my generation that had childhood trauma and didn't face it till they were an adult because they didn't know. I mean, now things are coming out
Mhm.
and people are speaking, and we've got a lot of people coming to the forefront, whether they're authors or other people that are willing to speak publicly about it. But you're right. Some children may just believe and hope to believe that everybody's everybody's in this
Right.
situation.
Mhm.
Well, it goes back to the environment too. You're not
Mhm.
taking away the trauma, but it goes back to the environment because
Yeah.
you could be in a family who really doesn't care about it. I mean, what's it like to
Mhm.
be a kid and love the birds? RT.
Yeah.
I thought
Mhm.
that was really funny because Twitter and tweets and RTs. I thought that was cool.
I
But you could
like it.
love, this
Mhm.
certain area in your own family could be out there killing it or what, what I mean, doing things. And now you have, so there's that whole balance. And so, yeah, it's, these things have to be talked about. I think that's the way to do it. And a book can
Mhm.
help you. A book, kids add their own imagination into a book. They're
Mhm.
able to co-create the words and see and visualize themselves. So it's a very private, reading is so private. And that's such a beautiful thing, beautiful, I can say it, but it is. I mean, to me, it is. It's a beautiful thing to go through that. But the other thing that I think is interesting, because you, like Nancy and I were both saying, you're an amazing writer.
Mhm.
And I think your characters come to life so in just like, wow. And the scene, I wonder, like, I know you've written a full play. So does that help you to write for kids and be able to, because you can't overwrite a play.
Yes. Well, actually my studies were in playwriting, and then second focus was fiction. So I had to write a full-length play for my thesis. And that was I guess it was an adult, it could have gone YA, but I didn't do anything with it. And the playwriting all came about because I wrote plays with my fifth graders. And they would bring all that knowledge that I just explained to you previous in our conversation and write a story about it and then perform it on stage. So with a play, though, it does, you asked if it informed my fiction writing, and it really does, because when I was writing plays, or when I was studying playwriting, I had a wonderful mentor. And she said to me, even if you don't continue writing plays, this is going to help you so much writing dialogue and learning about keeping your words spare. In other words, not using a bunch of jargon, and, get to the point, write it, if it's descriptive, that's fine, but write what you need and don't overdo it. And especially with dialogue, it really did help me with that.
That's awesome.
And
That's
I also,
awesome.
I have a couple of, short plays that I'm sort of fiddling with for kids. So I might go back to that. I don't know.
See, and that's a good, I mean, you could do even something with Artemis, like create that into like a play, and with kids, then it becomes like if they had the book and a play and a discussion with the play, like that just brings it all home. Like, and then there's Netflix and Hulu. I'm just saying, I mean, this could go on and on, but you can see, I love the Brave Girls. I just really love that name, and that it's a collection because it could go anywhere. And I
Yeah.
think girls would just, I see it being something where once you, I mean,
Timely.
when you're at that age, when you start really reading and you start really, I mean, you eat books literally as kids and adults, but once you start getting into it, I can see just, you're going to want like a full on collection. And then if it comes on the screen, and then, I'm just saying, get on with it.
Love the plan.
Kind of
Love the
like
plan. You're my
Nancy
best
Drew series.
cheerleader.
Yeah. When I was growing up, the Nancy Drew mystery series.
Yeah,
I
see, that's
had to
exactly
get the
it.
next one. I had to.
Yeah.
Me
And the
too.
Hardy Boys.
Yeah,
Yes.
the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too. Oh my gosh.
I
It's fun to
know.
think about, for sure. It's fun to think about.
Well, you're the
Yeah.
next one for girls to go through
Mhm.
things and understand things and be empowered.
I would love
Very
it.
cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, you're a very inspiring writer, and everyone, again,
Mhm.
February 2nd, 2023 is the date, and you can get it now. Well, get it now by ordering online, right? So everyone goes to your website, you can pre-order. And so it's okay. I'm gonna get this right.
Oh,
This is
boy.
my language test for the day. Go to Kimberly Behre Kenna.com. Did I get it?
Excellent.
I
Perfect.
read
Good
that.
job.
All right. And also she's on social media. You're on Facebook, Instagram. Am I getting this? Facebook, Instagram?
Yeah, Twitter. It's all on my website though.
Yeah. Okay. Everyone go there. And I'm going to spell it out again. It's Behre and then Kenna. So like you would say Kenna, like I wanted to, but like that's not
Most
right.
people-
So
most people
there
do.
you go. But everyone keep up with us at bigblendradio.com. We hope to have Kimberly back on the show and also talk more about the nonprofit that you're working with. I think what they're doing is fantastic. So again, everyone, that website is savethesound.org. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you
you.
so much. It was so fun.
Good. I like that.